Back and bigger than ever, it's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, we are back. It is your signing day edition of the unofficial 40 podcast, where Brent Venables officially took it over, and we finally, after a Lincoln Riley surprise disappearance and I don't know, a trade or whatever you want to call him, T-bow. After all that happened, Brent Venables is named head coach. There was an airport in there somewhere. There was tons of recruiting. And we're finally here at a point where stability is in sight for the Oklahoma football program, and stability for the unofficial 40 podcast and its contributors is in sight. We welcome in Josh McQuistion, Eddie Radosevich, Bob Persbillo. I am Kerry Murdoch. Congratulations, boys. We made it. I think it does.
Although for the first time since the early signing period, February is actually going to mean something. Which is fun.
Which is exciting.
It is kind
of I love that.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, just all the shit that has gone down. I mean, the amount of work that you guys have put into this thing, I am happy for you guys that this is kind of coming to a conclusion a little bit. And now it's just kind of business as normal, recruiting, head coach, football game to be played, practices, all that stuff. We're back to normalcy a little bit.
Today was the first day that I woke up and felt like there wasn't something like pressing almost. Since Lincoln Riley, since that Sunday, today felt like, and I know that there's still going to be some staff hires made. There's still going to be some movement. Caden Helms obviously signed today and made that official. It's now up to 14. But today was the first day that it was like, I might breathe a little bit.
Guys, I don't know about you. I'd like to do a little Christmas shopping. I've got some stuff that I have had no time to do.
You had a birthday party last night.
Yes, I had. Guys, yesterday was pour a little out. Whoever's listening, drinking your whiskey on a Thursday night, enjoying your life. Pour a little out for poor little Layla McQuistion last night that really had a totally derelict father on her birthday. I was kind of with my family, but not really with my family. They went to the zoo. I'm on my computer. I'm on my phone. I'm not that engaged in anything that's happening.
Josh, don't worry about it. She'll make up for it with all the sleeping around she's going to do in high school.
I mean, she'll get me back, and it may be that, and that's a horrifying idea. But, there is... I have no doubt she'd be like, you remember that time when I was 4 and you talked about it on the podcast? You're an asshole, and this is why, and this is why I've done this. And so, again, I've said for years, I'm going to pick up the tab on all the psychology bills. I mean, that's fine. I'll own that in their lackluster development.
Is it worse because you were, constantly connected? But let's be honest, by 10 o'clock, nothing really happened the rest of the day.
That was, to me, I think for Tiffany, that's the worst part. Tiffany's always okay if I have something to do. She's so by the end of the night, we go and see a movie last night with the girls, and, it was fun. Everybody had a good time. But at the end of it, she was like, so that thing that was going to happen never happened. I was like, never happened. No action there. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, I guess. I mean, and the thing, and I was immediately as a husband and a recruiting guy, have to pivot. I'm like, at least I'm not a Florida State reporter. Do you know what a shit show our lives would have been if I lived in Tallahassee? That would have been a nightmare.
I sent that screenshot to you guys of their board yesterday. It was thank the Lord that we are not in this position right now.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. I think as many bad days as we've had.
Was that just the tweet from Message Board Geniuses?
I think it was Zach Barnett that
threw
it
it
out there from
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was awful.
Either way.
I got on the Fire Mike Norvell Twitter space for about a minute, and it was so crazy. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that today.
I mean, guys, what? I'm trying to think of the apt compare. If OU fans suddenly hated Roy Williams, hated him, what? I'm trying to think of like a comp that makes sense.
Baker?
Yes, that's probably even
like
better.
Baker.
You're right.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. That's even better. It would be that sort of. Guys, I don't want to diverge too much. That makes me think, like, what is Lincoln and the way he's left and the way everybody feels about him? How does that warp the connection to Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray at all? Like, do you feel like that makes that not wrong, not bad, just kind of, does it muddle it a little bit?
Oh, we've talked about it. I know we've heard some stuff, and I think Eddie's heard this too, that Kyler Murray threw kind of a back shot, like he was pissed off at Lincoln, like
yes,
to the point where if his statue ceremony happened like before the bowl game, he wouldn't want Lincoln to be there.
I think that's accurate.
Wow,
I don't know. Well, Baker, I don't know, because Baker,
they're so entwined.
Yeah, I mean they were such a power couple. I mean,
Lincoln can't come back to campus anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. No.
It's kind of like the Kevin Durant thing. Like he needs to stay away for 4 or 5 years before he comes back.
I was thinking like 10 before he wouldn't just get booed out of the stadium.
If he falls flat on his face at USC, he can come back sooner.
Yep. If he goes and builds a monster, I don't know that he'll ever be welcome.
Boom. Because
there'll be no pity. Like, at least if he fails, you're like, well, you made a terrible choice. You paid for that terrible choice.
Yeah.
You're now you're now the OC at Troy or something. Like whatever it may be.
If there are no consequences to his actions, then it lingers. It continues to linger. Although, judging by the fact that they signed 6 players, it makes me question how successful he's going to be out there.
Well, we were kind of talking about this before we started. I mean, it is a full rebuild at USC. Can they do it quicker than most places? Obviously, because of where they are. But, I mean, I remember talking, I didn't talk to Ryan Abraham, but Ryan put this out on Twitter, I think. It might have been after they got their ass whooped by Notre Dame or somebody, and he just flat out said, and Ryan Abraham does a great job covering USC, he just flat out said something to the effect of, this might be the worst USC team in 60 years. Like, he's taken over a program that is, and I think that they quit a little bit on him too last year. But,
sure.
I mean, that's a bad football team right now, and they're having to rebuild a culture, which, depending on who you talk to in Norman, they didn't necessarily have a culture of just awesomeness to begin with. Isn't that like one of the big changes that everybody's expecting with the turnover with Brent Venables, is to have a stronger culture?
Well, and to see Lincoln just reuse shit that he used at OU during his recruiting, it's like,
that was so foul.
It was just like, dude, do you just think you're going to like copy this and paste your way to building a program? Like, is that what you do? Like, is that what you think this is? Like, it really made me question whether he could do this or not, just seeing that alone.
It's like I said, guys, Lincoln's a smart guy. Really smart guys think other people are fucking stupid. Like, it's like he thought people weren't going to notice. Really? Everybody in Oklahoma is dying for a chance to bag on you. And you gave them such an easy shot that they're going to point out to the rest of college football that you're just running out this retread shit. Like, and doing so like, for what?
You don't think Eddie Radosevich is going to put those two videos side by side for the world to see?
Have you met Eddie Radosevich?
Shocked. I was shocked that it's one thing to use the same idea, but the music.
Music. Yeah.
Those were that literally. I did not do anything to the music beds. Those are laid over each other. It was incredible. I was actually pretty surprised.
And to do so. And to if you open yourself up to be the butt of a joke and you go land a top 10 class in the country, man, whatever. Screw whoever's going to talk trash on you, whatever. To do that for 6 commitments and to be the 79th ranked class in Rivals, okay.
Hey, they started the day out as 99th. They made some progress.
Yeah, guys, we were talking. I really. The point I made right before we went on, I hadn't even thought about it until the 4 of us were sitting here talking before we get started. Brent Venables in a week made more impact on his recruiting class than Lincoln Riley did in 2 at USC. And the whole point of going to USC was they were going to land all this elite West Coast talent. And that's considering that Oregon lost their head coach.
Yeah.
It should have been a feeding frenzy, and it didn't happen. Now, it may still, the McMillan kid who's really good. Yeah, there's some parts that can still happen. They'll finish better than 79th. Don't get me wrong. But I think OU will move up from where they are right now. I've been pretty impressed with the return so far for Brent Venables. I think he's done well. There's a lot of work to do, but I think there's more good stuff to come.
And shall we get into it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the class here, but on that subject, I mean, as far as what's ahead, guys, what stood out to me yesterday most about Brent Venables' press conference was him talking about how excited he is to go through this and to go through and evaluate kids and find diamonds in the rough. And he was talking a lot about Jeremy Beal, and I got to say, it's a little odd that you have a head coach now with that history at Oklahoma where he goes back and you're like, yeah, I remember covering that kid and him coming in here and, his recruitment and stuff like that. It's really funny. I mean, it's peculiar. It's strange. It's all of the above.
Since the early signing period, the only diamond in the rough is Braden Willis. That's the only guy that popped up that was just new in January and became a member of the class. So, yeah, it's going to be intriguing just to see what kind of kids Brent Venables finds in this next month that maybe we hadn't even thought of whatsoever in the last 2-3 months.
Don't you guys find it too kind of, I guess the way that I look at it too, it's like, he's going to find somebody. Like,
oh yeah.
I feel like Brent Venables' ability to go find a football player is, I don't know if I could think of anybody else around the country that I would have more faith in being able to do that.
Josh, the problem that I see there is, do you get in that situation? And we all know, like, Brent's going to go out and he's going to evaluate guys that we are like, yeah, that guy's a really good football player. But is it going to be, yes, that guy's a really good football player at this division of football or this type of, this power, group of 5 program? Is he a real NFL type talent? And that's the danger that you always play because, for every Teddy Lehman, there's going to be a Tom Ward in there somewhere. Not to bag on Tom Ward. Lord knows he got enough of that as a player. But I'm just saying, a guy whose skills we all love, but just not quite, might not have the measurables that, most NFL guys would have.
And in general, that would concern me more. In this first class, get the guys you need. OU just has too many holes right now in that roster to be that picky. I mean, if you can, don't get me wrong. In a normal world, I'm going to take. I guess maybe a good example would be I'm going to take Frank Alexander over Jeremy Beal. Jeremy Beal was a better player, and I get that. Frank Alexander is the guy you can go to recruits and be like, we sent him to the NFL draft. He had an NFL career. All these things. The stuff that matters to recruits today. And I know Brent Venables looks at things a little differently, and that's fine. But if you want to land elite guys, you have to be sending guys to the NFL. And in the first year, Jeremy Beal's fine. You go and again, that I realize that's a massive understatement. Like, you'd love to have another Jeremy Beal.
Yeah, he was great.
Great. I feel like this turns into like me not thinking he was good. I know how good Jeremy Beal was. He was a great player. At the same time, as you develop, you've got to go get those elite guys. And what I do think is good for Brent is, you talk about, well, what about the, does he see it as the guys that are on OU's level that, where they need to be? Unlike a lot of guys, he doesn't have to readjust his settings. Right. He's been at Clemson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they can play at Clemson, they can play at Oklahoma. Yeah, exactly. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll find some guys. I really do. Somebody asked me in our board chat, what do I think the class is going to end up at? And I think it pushes to 22, 23. Like, I think they'll get pretty aggressive here. I really do. Now, you have to say, like, everybody's going to get excited. Those 7 or 8 guys, 4 of them are going to be nobody. Like, they're just going to, just the math says you go and get guys late, they're just not going to pan out to be the guys you want. But if you can get a couple of guys that are even just a couple year starters, good, solid, Big 12 / SEC, I guess, however you want to say that now, players, then you're fine. You're okay. It's just you can't have all of them be a wash and then put a ton of pressure on what was already kind of a small class.
Now, Josh, Gabe Dindy signed early with A&M. We know not having a defensive line coach hurt them. Doesn't really explain what happened with the offensive line closing. But how much, in your estimation, did it hurt just not having position coaches named for certain groups?
Oh, I think it's huge. Now, Dindy, I don't think it's big in the way of like if they would have hired, let's say, Todd Bates, who was rumored for so long from Clemson. I don't think that moves the needle for Gabe Dindy at all. Gabe Dindy wants to be a 4 technique or wider. He wants to be outside. Maybe you could talk him into a 3, but that's about as good as it's going to get. I don't think he even wants to do that. So when it was Brent Venables, he knew what Clemson had recruited him as, and I think that was always going to be a tough sell. Now, again, we've talked before about what would have happened if you keep who. There's no reason to keep rehashing that. It is what it is. But I don't know that changes much for him. But there are absolutely some guys that you wonder. A perfect example, and it's not so much that anything changed with this guy, but maybe it gives you a little momentum if Gentry Williams is going to sign in this early period if he knew who his corners coach was going to be. And I would be very surprised if Gentry wouldn't have signed in that scenario, because everybody's still trying to find, well, who's he going to look at? I mean, he's pretty much said it's not USC, and that, as much as that surprises me and differentiates from what I thought probably a week ago with him. Okay, so what? Arkansas and Florida? Florida's got a new head coach. Arkansas is just not Oklahoma. I don't care how you spin it. I think it's just him knowing what the future is and feeling comfortable with whoever that guy is. But it would have given you some momentum. It would have been nice to have the best player in your state, fully on board on signing day.
Did OU lose Xavier Bryce because of it, or is that not accurate?
I don't think so. What I was actually talking, I talked to the staff at Seguin quite a bit. I was one of the few guys, the schools that everybody goes by, Aledo, Carthage, the schools that even OU's involved with. There are, I'm one of 27 reporters that comes through. Arlington Seguin, even for having some talented guys, not a lot of people go. Well, I went to a practice in the summer and I saw 2 games this season. So that staff, they have some, I don't know, appreciation, whatever you want to say. They know me a little bit. And so I was talking to them, and it sounds like the commitment of his teammate, 2023 DB Jameel Johnson, was a huge part of this. He was I wouldn't say the deciding factor, but it gave Xavier something to kind of buy into, and had his buddy in his ear. And I think that's, in the end, just what did it. Excuse me, what I will say is funny is about a week ago, I'm talking to Xavier, and he's like, and I was asking if he knew when Brent was going to come by. And I said, well, I know they're kind of working it against you and Kobie, and they're going to, be at one night and be at the other one the next night. And he goes, oh, no, I don't think they're talking to Kobie. I was like, oh, like I knew. I was like, no, they're going in home with him. And he goes, well, I don't, I hadn't really talked to Kobie much lately. I was like, oh, since he decommitted to Texas. He goes, yeah. And I go, is it just kind of a, with us or against us kind of thing? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're still going to Texas this weekend, right? And he goes, yeah. And now he has now flipped to Texas. And I'm like, that is a weird, and I like Xavier a lot. I do. But I was like, that is a weird stance to take considering your situation. But, like I said, all's good. He's a great kid. I really enjoyed covering him. He sent me a nice message last night, just, hey, thanks for covering me, blah, blah, blah. But it's just one of these funny things in recruiting. Like people, why would a 17-year-old do that? Because they do crazy stuff, man. They do weird stuff that doesn't make sense sometimes, and it's okay. Like that's just the way it goes. You got to accept that.
All right, so let's just kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the class. Josh, kind of, I don't know, if you want to pick a guy, a storyline, something that, you felt like that might have been overlooked a little bit, or someone that you felt like, you did a really good job with in securing them, or, a guy that you're surprised maybe they didn't end up with.
It's almost like everything's separated into 2, isn't it? Like the ability to hold everything together, the stabilization, and then everything that happened last weekend.
It is. It really is. Like, it's a wild thing to consider. The guy that I would say, just kind of the surprise to get in on, I think you have to say Jayden Gibson. For Oklahoma to do what they did in a week, guys, I'm talking to people that I really trust that are like, that's an NFL wide receiver, like just waiting to, I've made the Mike Evans comp. I've heard, I know Teddy compared him to Plaxico Burress. And I've heard that from other coaches, like that kind of like those big bodied, just unbelievable type receivers. And that's what he is. I mean, he is a legit 6'5", 200 pounds, very physically gifted. There's just a ton to like. As far as maybe like an under the radar guy that I really like what they did, I think, and you have to give some credit to the outgoing staff, Robert Spears Jennings. Nobody was talking about him as a DB. And OU said, we want you to come down here and work out. You go watch that dude's senior tape. That's a 4-star safety. I will be making that recommendation to move him up in the Rivals rankings because I think he's outstanding. I had a chance to see him twice this year. The first game, he didn't play any DB. The second game, he played a lot against, obviously a very good Tulsa Union team. And that's not your normal converted receiver, dude. He will come downhill. He will hit you. He is violent. And has all the same ball skills as the guy who was an Ole Miss recruit for Jeff Lebby as a wide receiver. So, I mean, like, there's a lot to like there. But, that's the thing. I was talking to somebody about it today. I like this class. Like, I know it's not as highly ranked. There's not as many bodies as OU fans would like to see, and I get all that, and it's right. But there are pieces in this class that are really good and really have a lot of upside. Jaden Rowe, I mean, OU, I would think in the 20 years I've done this, I don't know that I've seen a guy with his physical tools. 6'2", 200 pounds, 210 by some people's measurement is, I mean, he could grow into a linebacker. He's that big. I mean, he is a big, broad dude and runs legitimate 10-400 meters. Like, guys, I don't know about you. If I knew nothing else, I'm interested. Tell me those three things. I'm like, okay, like, let me see the tape. Like, I don't need you to tell me who he plays for, where he's from. I don't even know any of that. Like, those three things, I'm like, yeah, I'll watch that tape. And he's physical. He makes plays. There are people that have made the Isaiah Simmons comp. I'm not ready to go there, but the dude can do some freaky stuff and could play about 5 different positions on the defense.
The period is still going on. It goes on through Friday. We know Caden went in this morning. Do you expect anything else in the next 2 days?
I don't. I think that, and I guess, I mean, we'll just address the elephant in the room.
We're still waiting on a few in the next 24 hours. So people are going to be reading into that.
Oh, sure. There are, I know everyone kind of wondered, and I think I believe it was in the Wednesday notes I put up, late, early signing day, that Javonte Barnes' coaching staff had told me he was going to sign in February and was going to announce his commitment at the Under Armour All-American game next month. All we have to go on is that because, I mean, obviously, if anything happens, whether it's USC or OU, those schools aren't going to announce it. They don't want to mess up with their relationship with Javonte Barnes. From everybody I talked to, I still like where Oklahoma is a lot. I think that's going to be a good situation. And Oklahoma's done well with these kind of scenarios, going back to guys like Nick Benito and some others before that, said, oh, I'm going to sign in February, and they actually signed in December and, played in the game. We'll see with Javonte Barnes, but I like where OU is. I think USC has made it interesting as time went on, but we'll see. Like I said, I don't think there's much more left to do. He's going to announce at the Under Armour game, and we'll all kind of know. So, we'll watch that going forward.
I think it's one of those things, too. I remember, wasn't it Louisville staff that burned Nick Benito when he did that?
Yes. Yes, it was.
That shouldn't be happening anymore with the transfer portal because you burn a kid like that now, then you pretty much exhausting your chance of getting him back if things don't go well at the place he signs with.
I think that's exactly the case. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, people say, oh, this is nothing but bad. Man, it keeps these coaches acting like human beings sometimes, like rather than, well, crap, we lost that kid, screw him, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, still okay to let the kid have his moment. That's all right. And I get, you know, you spend a year working on a guy and lose him. That's frustrating. I get it. But that's the job you signed up for. That's business.
By the way, did you guys hear Mike Gundy's comments on the early signing period, which
I actually have not. No.
I'm sorry. The dumbest thing that's come out of signing day are people bitching about how they need to get rid of the early signing period because schools cannot stop firing their coaches. Like, it's not anybody's fault that the early signing day is screwed up and schools fire their coaches. Stop firing, you know, Todd, whatever. Stop firing your coaches a month into the season. Like, that shouldn't eliminate signing day. But Mike Gundy basically came out and said, yeah, the big schools want it changed, and they don't want it because it takes away their chance to cheat more. He might be right.
Well, there's real legislation about it going to January, and I don't understand that.
I don't either.
How does that help?
That doesn't take away the coaching carousel. That doesn't change anything.
No, if anything, it compresses timelines.
Yep. And so, and Bob, you mentioned that to me before. And you know, obviously with all we've had going on, I didn't have time to really ask. Was that like the early period would be in January and the regular period would still exist in February?
Yes.
It's
that's
stupid.
The dumbest shit I've ever heard.
That's so stupid.
That's absurd. Why would that work?
And by the way, USC fired Helton in like September, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that had nothing to do with the early signing period. They fired him 3 months before the recruiting thing. And they didn't have another coach until a week before or 2 weeks before
they still
signing.
Waited.
Yeah.
Like Tech is the exact opposite. They at least fired somebody and then made the hire, and he had his staff in place before the signing day.
And good on Tech because, I mean, they did a lot better.
Perfectly.
Yeah, they did a lot better than USC did.
I mean, maybe it was the high school level, but Tech hired a guy that's built a program before.
Sure.
So, you know, who knows? But yeah, guys, there are two schools I can get behind. One is like a late summer signing period, and that's, you know, late July, like August 1 through 3, right before the start of camp. Like, okay, fine, I could get there, and you can build caveats into it, like we're, you know, if a head coach or a coordinator, you know, like even if you wanted to say we're going to let the kid designate, he can pick two coaches that are requirements to his staying the course with this school. If those two guys are still there, if everything else changes, it doesn't matter. He's still bound to that letter of intent. If those guys change, then he has the option to opt out if he wants to. I think that can work. And it gets the guys, you know, that we talk about all the time, the guys that are going to go to Texas, the guys that are going to go to Oklahoma, the guys that are going to go wherever, they can be done with it. And they don't have to worry about anybody calling anymore. They don't have to worry about any of that crap. It's just they get to live their lives. Trevor Lawrence is a good example. When he signed that grant of rights thing with Clemson in like early his senior year. Well, okay, he just got to be done with it because he was already on board and it was good, and it basically amounted to the same thing. Or the Andy Staples method, where it's just like, say, January 1st of your junior year, from that point forward, whenever you want to sign. Like, just be done with it. And that, because why are we beholden to a period? I don't understand that, really.
Wouldn't it be cool if, like, let's say a team let's say a team like Cincinnati, wouldn't it be cool if that team could ride the wave of emotion and you know, success and like announce that they've just signed like 5 guys after they got selected to the college football playoff? Like, wouldn't that add to college football? Like, OU and Texas play, OU wins, and they get like 3 commitments the next day that sign with them that were considering OU and Texas.
Yep.
Like, why not just have it open from the time they finish their junior years until the official signing day?
I think that's awesome. And from a, you know, people could, like Mike Gundy talking about, well, the big teams could cheat. It also keeps college football at the forefront. Like the NFL, we always talk about the NFL being masters of never slipping away from the national consciousness. Imagine Travis Hunter's story happening in the middle of March when nobody's thinking about college football, and all of a sudden, hey, this humongous story where a kid's going to Jackson State, like, that changes everything. That's like I said, it gives you a chance to have some run, some national press at any time of year. And for us as, a site that has a lot of recruiting connections, also just awesome that we get some, we could have some real run in the middle of June.
You could also have a lot of people enter the transfer portal, more people enter the transfer portal if that were the case, though, and you signed on an emotional basis.
Sure.
Spur of the moment kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that you probably would.
Yeah, you definitely would.
But at this, do we think the portal's slowing down anytime soon? Like, the portal is.
Did you see
it's a
that
monster.
stat
There's no
that
way
I
to fix
sent to the war room yesterday?
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
it's out of control.
Like only 16%, almost not quite 17% of all players that had been in the portal since August 1st had even found a home. 17%.
There are two. I think the transfer portal and NIL are both great things for the game of college football in the long run, but it's bordering on getting to the point where there has to be some type of regulation. I know that we'll probably get into the NIL stuff with Texas, but it just, I don't know. It's kind of a sketchy area right now.
Very.
Real quick, before we get too far away from, we talked about Javonte Bonds and finishing out the kind of the 2022 class. What can be said about Jaren Kanak right now? The Clemson commit. It was notable that he didn't sign. They signed 12 of their 13 guys that are committed, Josh. Is there much that can be said right now? Is it a wait and see? It still feels like everybody feels pretty confident that he ends up in Norman.
I think the biggest sign of confidence, because no matter what's happening, OU is going to play this. The way Venables answered some things yesterday, you could tell he was trying to be careful of what he said, how he said it, in regard to Clemson recruits and that kind of stuff. So my biggest vote of confidence comes from the way Clemson is handling this. Dabo talked about, a dandy dozen, signing 12 guys, that kind of thing, leaving Kanak just completely out of the conversation. Talking to some Clemson sources. There was actually our Clemson site, and I don't want to give away too much of what they had on a premium board, but there was almost an impression amongst some Clemson people that maybe he didn't do anything, almost as a favor is probably strong, but kind of as a nod to Clemson, like, hey, I love the idea of playing here. And to kind of maybe stop some of the negative momentum going on in that class, we've talked about it. They lost Keon Sabb, they lost Jahad Campbell, they lost Dalen Everett to Georgia. So they've taken some hits. So I think maybe there was some feeling amongst Clemson people that he had almost done that as, I'm not gonna make a big national story, because obviously with the Brent thing, it would have been an even bigger thing than just any normal 4-star flipping. So I think that there's some belief there. So again, my guess is the next time he plays football, it will be in an OU helmet. How exactly that plays out is going to be very interesting to watch. For those that would ask, he is a midterm enrollee. So I think no matter what answer comes along, we'll know before too terribly long. But it's an interesting story. It's going to be one of those ones that, someday, if it is Oklahoma and I'm right, you guys get a chance to sit down and talk with him. It's going to be great to hear what all went into that. How did that play out? Because it is very well kept. Like, I know, there are people around his high school program still refusing any idea that there's been any contact with Oklahoma. It's as locked down a recruiting story as I can remember.
We might have a new conspiracy theorist to replace Michael Turk when he's gone.
Who's not leaving?
He's not leaving.
No, I know. That's why I said when he's gone, because he's staying.
Do you have to sign a letter of intent? Does a player have to do that?
You have to sign a financial aid agreement.
Financial aid, yeah.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. I didn't know how that works, and if I did, I'd forgotten.
That was what we learned about that with the Dorial Green Beckham stuff. Like he never had to sign a scholarship, or he just had to sign a financial aid agreement. And that's why the coaches could talk to him.
One thing I want to ask Josh is that I know Brent said yesterday that Jeff Lebby was so huge with Nick Evers. I know you talked to Nick in depth about everything. What was his relationship like with Brent throughout that weekend? How involved was Brent, or was it more just Lebby running the show?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Brent was very involved, especially that weekend. I know, and it was something that I think had been reported a few places that Brent was in at that initial in-home visit, and he was not. I clarified that with Nick himself. That was just Joe, John, and Lebby were in home. I guess that was Thursday night, or was that? Maybe it was Wednesday night. I can't remember. It was
Wednesday night.
No one's blaming you for not remembering.
My brain's a little fried. Late middle of that week. But I think Bob is right. I think it was Wednesday. Anyway, so Venables wasn't there, but once he got on campus, Brent was very active. Really, and not surprisingly, I think Lebby, from what I can gather, was very connected to to Nick himself, to Jayden Gibson, really being active with those guys. While Brent, I got the impression, really sold mom and dad, the Evers parents. I know Jayden Gibson's mother was there, like that. He really worked on that side of things. And, it's not that he wasn't talking to Nick or Jayden. It's not that. I'm just saying I think he knew that Lebby kind of had the relationship with the players, and he felt like he could build it with the parents, make them feel comfortable. Your kid's going to be taken care of, that kind of thing. And so I think that's kind of what Brent went toward with that.
I guess what I'm wondering is, is that how he'll handle offensive recruiting maybe more, or is it just because of the time period that this is what he had to do?
I would guess it was probably more to do with the time, like just being able to know what your energy was, know to focus on it. Those he was so stretched thin, and I can't say how impressed I was with how well he got out and how quickly he got out to see a lot of the trouble guys, not trouble guys, but the danger points of the class, the parts where it looked like it was starting to crack and they were having some real problems. And I feel like that was he navigated that really well, and frankly he had to, because they were in real trouble.
I'm going to make Bob ask another question. I'm just going to sit here.
Keep them coming, Bob.
Fair enough. Let's go Kobie. Let's go Kobie McKinzie, getting him back into the fold. The first shot fired by Venables in the OU Texas battles. That'll be years and years to come, and just what all went into it. And, it was kind of weird, right? Because he never actually tweeted his commitment to Texas. He put it out there and let others say that he was committed to Texas almost at the same time as Brent Venables is flying back to Norman to be introduced as head coach. And I guess the theory is like, man, if you could have just waited a couple more days, Brent could have gotten into the home and tried to make a real impact. But that happened anyway. But just how huge was that to get Kobie to flip back?
Oh, it's huge. And to your point, Bob, I think that night when Cale Gundy knew that it was going to be Brent Venables and the staff was kind of, officially aware of it, I think he called Will Truby that night and was kind of like, man, like, you couldn't have given us just a couple of days here. We absolutely could have made this work. And I said at the time, I think Kobie went a little quicker than some people around him were expecting him to. I think that all came together a little faster than anticipated. And honestly, guys, I mean, that shouldn't be a huge surprise, because we can go back through some of Kobie's stuff. Kobie is clearly a decisive person. Like, he sees something and he does it. Like, his commitment to Oklahoma, decisive. He wasted no time, committed within 2 weeks of them losing to LSU. I mean, like, a lot of people were jumping off the ship, and he's like, no, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go do it. And then he had the announcement about him moving into a different recruiting class. And, there was kind of like, well, let's there was a lot that hadn't been that kind of checked out on that deal. So it was, there's a lot about him that just fits that narrative. He is kind of that person. But yeah, as far as the decision itself, I think Kobie just bought into Brent Venables. I mean, and really, really liked what he had to say. I know, talking to some other recruits that were there last weekend, they apparently had a fairly extensive video session where they're just watching tape. He and Venables together just going over stuff, and that adds up. Brent talked about it, I know, during the press conference, what a film junkie he is, just what a football guy he is. And God, Kerry, you can attest to that. That's Brent Venables' dream, is to find guys like that are just breathe it. And that's what it sounds like Kobie McKinzie was like for him. And so I think he just bought in completely.
Brent's not going to be able to help himself. I mean, you heard it yesterday when he started talking about Jeremy Beal and his hands and, his leverage and all that. Like, he loves talking football and the minutia of playing a position. You're going to learn a lot about that stuff coming up.
And I've learned in transcribing it. When he's talking in general terms, he's very slow. Like he's, there's, pacing to it. And then when it's football terms, it's rapid fire. And I can't keep up.
Very passionate.
It's great.
Like I said, he can't turn it off. He is who he is. Like, he is a football guy in his marrow. Like, that's just what he is. And so he gets excited when he talks about stuff like that. And that was why I loved I don't know who, I'd love to give him credit. I don't know who asked that Kobie McKinzie question, but that's why I loved it, because it was just so on brand for him and him getting to be exactly the person he is.
It's a little erotic hearing him talk about being strong up through the middle at linebacker and then back through safety. It's like, that's shit that you haven't heard in a while. And just knowing what they have at linebacker, whether you want to say like Danny Stutzman or Kobie McKinzie coming in, those guys seem like they are just outstanding foundations for what Brent Venables wants to be defensively. And, I think listening to Kobie, because I hadn't really heard him talk a bunch, I jumped on one of those, I think it was Travis Davidson's Twitter space, and just hearing him talk about Brent Venables, Kel Gundy, guys that basically swayed him back to Oklahoma. It's kind of incredible. I think that he's obviously a pretty special kid.
He is. Like, I like Kobie a lot. Over the last month, I won't say we've talked as much as usual, but he's always been very direct with me, very easy to deal with. I can remember, doing the first visit he made to Oklahoma, doing the visit, and he was just sitting in the back of his truck riding home with his parents, and we talked for like 30 minutes. And it was, largely went on record, but plenty of it just, us kind of shooting the breeze talking. He's just that kind of guy.
All right. Bob, you have anything else you want to hit on in the class, or do we want to talk about the NIL mess?
I think for my part, we can move on, because I think we're now looking ahead January, and we've kind of talked about that.
Well, and, I think this is the impossible question to answer, which is, what did NIL have to do with Texas's class, and especially their offensive lineman haul? And I thought Brent's approach yesterday is pretty spot on. It's pretty on brand for him, which is, if we're recruiting guys that are more worried about NIL than they are about the football part of it, they're not for us. It's, and I don't want to be like, oh, that sounds good, but you still got to get players. There's always been that aspect of recruiting where you tell kids what they want to hear until they get on campus, and then they hear what you're going to tell them. I mean, like, that's universal. It's always been that way. And
Lane Kiffin said what you don't say out loud. You hope that all the guys that are getting promised money get the money that they're promised.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, also, as a family and a kid going to college, you have to also realize, like, you know what? If this team doesn't play very well, all these people that are giving this money to these funds might dry up pretty fast. And that NIL deal could go away. Because I'm sure it's structured in a way that's not like you're going to get this money no matter what. I mean, it's either going to be you get it for a year and it renews the next year. You get it as long as you're eligible. If you lose eligibility, you don't get paid. Like, there's got to be some structure to that contract those guys are signing. But, I mean, the thing about it is this NIL? When you start talking about what SMU is doing, what Texas is doing, where you have this, kind of, I don't know any other way to explain it, but like a political PAC. I mean, it's like you dump all this money into this fund that then gets distributed to people who are on scholarship. Like, you're not supposed to be able to have money waiting for you when you sign with a school. That's against what NIL is all about. That's against NCAA rules.
And it's a little bit out of my league. I went to a public school. I don't understand all this kind of stuff. But just on the surface, it seems like paying your third string offensive tackle $50,000 isn't, quote unquote, the market value. Is it not?
No, you're right. You're exact. Like, that guy's not making any NIL money. I mean, unless he's like a gamer on the side. Like, unless you're doing something else that's non-football related. Like, you could be a streamer. You could be like what Michael Turk is doing. I'm sure he's making, couple $1,000s a month off of his YouTube. He's got that many plays or views on his YouTube videos. That would establish a market value. $50,000, I mean, that's $4,000 a month, roughly, a little bit more than that. I mean, a third string offensive lineman, is he going to make almost $4,100 in name, image, likeness money a month? Probably not.
Yeah.
Especially not for doing charity work. Like, you would make a charity go bankrupt if they were paying you $50,000 a year for the third string offensive lineman. They're not getting any return on their investment for that.
There are charities that don't pay their directors that much money.
Yes, charities. They're non-profit. They're just trying to make enough money to stay afloat, to operate. They're not looking to hire celebrities to endorse them.
Guys, I don't know about you,
and
but
if
that's
they
why
do, those celebrities are doing it for free.
Yes, that's why the people getting all upset about this. Don't do this to yourselves. Like this, it may last for a year. It may last for a minute. There are too many people that are like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
For it to go on. Like it's not a tenable situation because there's no way you can justify the third string left guard is worth $50,000 in market value. And people say, well, how can you compare? Which NFL backup center do you know of? Name one. Like, much less one worth $50,000 in advertising. It doesn't exist. It's not real.
I mean, I don't know how much DJ Ugalele, I still can't pronounce his name, got for the Dr. Pepper Fansville thing for just showing up as a person on TV. Wasn't even a key actor or anything in it, but if it was like six figures, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
It could be 50. I mean, it should be probably 50.
Guys, Creed Humphrey has a chance as a center to be the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's an unbelievable accomplishment. How much do you think he's making $50K in advertising right now? I don't.
Well, he's got his Crocs deal.
I think he got the Croc deal, and he also what did he send out yesterday? One of the KC barbecue joints.
Okay.
He's giving away.
I mean, yes, I think, could I make Caleb Williams $50,000 next year? I think I could.
100%. Yes.
That's a little bit of a different situation as compared to an offensive lineman, though.
Well,
sure,
yeah,
especially
but
reserve.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's what I'm saying, Eddie, is I don't think it's impossible for Creed Humphrey to be making $50,000 because
no.
I myself could make Caleb Williams. I know how I could make him $50,000. So, like, it's not impossible.
DNA.
Canning farts. That's what people are doing now.
I saw that. That's so just disturbing, disgusting.
She made $90,000 canning her farts.
I don't know if I believe that, by the way, to be completely honest.
$100 a jar.
She got 100 of my dollars.
You don't want to know, Bob?
Nope.
This is called early morning radio prep work paying off on the pod.
It is kind of sad that it's the two people that work in morning radio that know about this, yes.
No, but, I mean, yeah, it's
But UPS is supposed to be here later today. I'll tell you guys what.
All right.
She puts flowers in them to help.
So disgusting.
Yeah, but, I mean, the NCAA, they're already looking at BYU over the Power Bar company, just blanketly giving scholarships. Who's the other school they're investigating? They're investigating somebody else. Miami for that MMA thing.
Of course they're investigating Miami.
MMA guys that were just, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were offering like $500 a month to anyone on the roster for.
I think so, yeah.
So I mean, yeah,
that was their plan.
I think these it's kind of like what we're doing. We're trying to build it from the ground up, and it's all pretty, minor stuff to this point. And I know like Schwab's is working with Caleb Williams, and they're various. We've seen various little things. So, like some of these people that have the big agencies are, they get pictures with like Supreme stuff on and things like that, and get paid for that, or fashion stuff on Instagram. But it's all. There's not millions in this for people. It's just, especially the third string offensive lineman. There's not tens of thousands. I mean, there may be tens of thousands, but that's it.
What was your guys' read on the Travis Hunter stuff with Jackson State? Just as far as
now, there might be millions in it for him.
Could there be? You think?
Yes.
If Barstool and Penn Global are involved,
but I also read something about isn't there an NIL Isn't the language in the NIL stuff that you can't use gambling funds?
Right, which doesn't make sense.
Would that fall under that?
Yeah.
Would Barstool fall under that with Penn Gaming?
Yeah, I mean, Barstool, they went out and made like a separate company. Yeah, they went out and made a separate company. Now, Barstool could be something with Deion Sanders and what they're doing, and they could use the advertising and give it over. Like maybe they could be doing a podcast with this kid. Who knows?
Sure. Well, they already have the reality show with
Deion. Yeah,
Deion. I don't know. I found it to be fascinating yesterday, just the reaction to all of it. It was that was the point that everybody threw their hands up in the air and said okay, enough is enough. When in reality, I don't think it's going to become a thing in a way. It's my opinion that I think it helps Deion more than it helps the player. I think it's cool that he's kind of being a trailblazer of sorts and going to an HBCU, but I don't know. It's going to be fascinating.
It's kind of like those initial Texas A&M deals that were big splash deals behind the realty company. Like you're going to see those splash deals here and there, but it's not something that's going to sustain NIL throughout college football. Like if Barstool was involved in that would just be something to draw attention to themselves. I mean, it would be as much a marketing shtick as it would be, a true marketing deal with that player. But I mean,
genius.
It's if it happens like that. I mean, Big Cat literally got kicked out of the Fire Mike Norvell Twitter space yesterday just
so good.
for being with Barstool.
It's absolutely incredible.
Guys, what would you place the odds that he spends his entire career in Jackson, Mississippi?
I was just getting ready to say, what are the odds that he plays a game in Jackson, Mississippi?
Also fair.
Am I under the impression that he never signed yesterday because he couldn't?
Let me check. We can look at that.
Well, we know he didn't sign with
Jackson State
Florida
Rival
State,
site, but I don't think that we have one.
Yeah, Jackson State.Rivals is not in function. But no, it just shows him as a verbal. I don't know what that means exactly.
I mean, that's the real thing here. Like, what if Deion is using this as his resume to get a Power 5 job?
Make no mistake, that's exactly what's happening.
I was just getting ready to say, I don't find Deion Sanders in it for the long haul at Jackson State.
No.
And that doesn't have anything to do with Jackson State as much as it has to do with Deion Sanders. He wants the Florida State job, or he wants something bigger.
There ain't no prime time in Jackson, Mississippi.
As good of a recruiter and as good of a job as they did in getting him, which, credit to them. I don't want to take anything away from them for being able to flip him from Florida State. This is all about Deion. It's always about Deion.
Well, the only positive about that is as good as that kid is and the transfer portal, what it is, he can go with Deion wherever he wants.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a risk-free decision. He has just become the most famous cornerback recruit in history. I mean, call it what it is.
In modern history, yeah.
Yeah, he is because it's he no longer is just about what a player he is. He will always be the kid that signed with Jackson State as the number one overall player in the country. The thing that nobody thought would ever happen, he just did it. And I kind of think that's cool. At the same time, do I think he probably got played a little bit? Yeah, I think he probably got played a little bit. And I know he's going to get an NIL deal. God, we've got to come up with different acronyms. NLI and NIL
Especially
are way too
day.
damn. Yeah. Yes, that's brutal on signing day on NSD.
Well, it used to be LOI, so we should just go back to LOI.
Yeah, okay, I can live with that. But, there's just no doubt. I don't think there's any question that the fact that this guy was headed to Florida State is absolutely intentional. Because Dion made it very clear when they hired Norvell, he wanted that job. And don't get me wrong, Florida State was absolutely not wrong to not hire him. A guy with absolutely
no. So you're saying this has been in the plans longer than Lincoln Riley to USC?
Yes. Yes. Because guys, we'd heard from you would see these top guys where they'd have Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, and Jackson State. He's been working on guys. There's another 5-star, Shamar Stewart, that people are talking about could end up as another Jackson State guy. And, people are starting to be like, well, exactly what Bob said a second ago. They'll sign, they'll go, and whether they play a year, 2 years, whatever. And then when Dion finally gets that Power 5 job, which, guys, make no mistake, he'll get a chance. Laying the number one player in the country at Jackson State, someone's going to be like, well, this is a chance we can take. We could do this. And
it was reported yesterday that he impressed TCU enough that they kind of brought him in as just I'm not going to say a throwaway interview, but they wanted to give him an opportunity because so many people wanted it to happen. And I think that the general sentiment coming out of the interview was, shit, that was pretty impressive.
And I think he still lives outside of Frisco too, Dion.
I think if you are an OU fan, you want no part of that. You do not want Deion Sanders at a Power 5 program in the state of Texas. That will be a problem. Kids, right, wrong, whatever you think about Dion, they love him. Yeah, they love him.
Yeah.
It's Deion Sanders.
Just the electricity when he would show up at an Under Armour camp. It was crazy.
He's one of those individuals that, when you walk by or he walks by you, it's like, holy shit.
That's Deion Sanders.
That's fucking Deion Sanders. It is what it is. He's one of the most famous athletes of all time.
People outside of the OU market will scoff at this comparison, but OU fans, it will ring true. It's like Baker Mayfield walking into a group of OU fans. Almost everybody else, that's cool. Even the coolest of OU fans, the guy that doesn't chase jerseys and isn't like the autograph hound, they're like, oh yeah, there's, whoever, there's Kyler Murray. Oh, that's pretty cool. They nerd out a little bit on Baker Mayfield. There's just no doubt about it. That's how recruits are about Dion. Even the coolest dude that knows he's the baddest guy in the country, Travis Hunter, the number one player in the country, is like, damn, that's Deion Sanders. That's really cool. They just react differently to him than they do anybody else.
Well, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant move to set it up that way and basically screw over Mike Norvell.
Just an absolute complete. You talk about meltdowns, and on top of the fact that they gave Mike Norvell an extension yesterday, Travis Hunter wasn't the only guy to leave the class yesterday, and they lost their offensive coordinator to Oregon. It was just a complete shit show.
Well, and they lost Marvin Jones Jr., a guy that we've talked about a ton, a guy that was legacy of the program, and son of one of the probably top 5 Florida State players ever. And he's going to Georgia, largely recruited by a guy named Jamil Adai that we have talked about some on the board. So, just a little side note there.
Yeah, do we want to slowly shift into team stuff? Because we did talk to Bob yesterday, unless there's some other recruiting loose ends to tie up before we get there.
I think we've worn it out pretty good. Bob, what do you think?
I think we're ready to move on.
Yep.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah, he was on the pod on the Prairie.
On the podcast. Podcast on the Prairie.
Podcast on the Prairie.
I've called it the Prairie on the podcast like 25 times.
The Prairie on the pod.
I think it's just the pod on the Prairie.
I continually refer to Sonny Dykes as Skip Holtz for some reason. I just can't get it out of my head.
They do kind of look the same. The frumpy old white men.
I don't know what it is.
No, but Caleb Williams was on the pod on the Prairie, I believe it is, Jeremiah Hall, Braden Willis's podcast, and
it's awesome that they got him. It's funny in a way, though, that the first time that we've ever heard from Caleb Williams is on a player-run podcast.
Hey, it's a new day. I'm all for it.
I think it's awesome. I'm all for it.
But, more of a conversation just about some things that you knew about. I thought it was interesting when he was like, look, I didn't hate Spencer, but we weren't like best friends. Mm-hmm. And you always hear that stuff about, we have such a great room in there, the tight end room. And basically, I thought Jeremiah Hall, I'm paraphrasing and maybe coloring this a little bit. It was kind of like Jeremiah Hall and Braden Willis were like, yeah, Austin Stogner is a weird dude. Didn't really vibe with him that well.
Yeah, I mean, they're teammates. They don't have to be best of friends. It doesn't mean like they couldn't work together and that there was turmoil in the locker room because they were together.
Yeah, but I mean, just having them say, you know what, it's weird trying to be friends with a guy that is in your position group because you want to beat him out.
Right.
Like someone finally said it instead of all the kumbaya crap. It's okay to admit that reality is different from what's always being sold to us.
Mm-hmm. Why did they have to be best friends? Like, I don't get why everybody needed that to be a story.
The coaches always make it out like the players all get along so well and they root for each other and they cheer each other on. No, the reality is that's not true. The reality is
Backup wants the starter to break his leg because he wants to get into the game.
Yes.
It's 85. I mean, fucking alpha males. Like, they're not all going to get along. Like, there's a lot of them that are going to hate each other. But that doesn't mean they can't go win a football game on Saturday.
It's hard to get along with a former player in the media. I can't imagine what it's like getting along with other players that are athletes together, playing on a football field, the thing that they were born to do.
Caleb saying that now allows me to trust what he says going forward. If he would have tried to say that him and Rattler were like, yeah, we were really good buds and, we worked and trained together and,
sad to see him go.
Dinner together. Like, no. We know that wasn't the case. So him saying flat out, hey, you guys come across people all the time that you either know or you work with doesn't mean you're best of buds, and that's okay. And
I did finally have that. Eddie, you were there. I had that conversation with Isaiah that I always wanted to have, which was, was Spencer really a jerk? And he was like, he was fine around the team, but in public, I could see why people didn't like him.
I mean, we've kind of, I don't want to call them horror stories, but we've heard there's reasons why the students and his classmates didn't like him. I mean, there's a reason why they chanted for Caleb Williams.
And it came out of the student
West Virginia
section.
game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just they're two completely polar opposite people from what we see and from, I think, what their classmates see. Caleb is very welcoming, very open, kind of wants to be everybody's friend. And I think that it is like both things can be true. Spencer Rattler handled everything probably about as well as he could have possibly done it. But he's also a little bit of a prick. He's a little bit of an asshole. And some people just are like that.
Well, and now you have three accounts from three different players. You had Isaiah, you had Jayden, or you had Jeremiah, and you had Braden, all talking about that Texas game and the way their faces light up when they start talking about what Caleb did in that game and how glad they were to see him play the way he did. Like,
he's just a guy that people wall, wasn't it?
I mean, he's just a guy that people wanted to get behind. Versus Spencer was not.
Jeremiah said something that I thought was fairly intriguing too, just as far as like talking about how Caleb performed during August, during practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said something to the effect of like, I thought you might take the job then. Like there were people in that locker room, I think, when things went poorly against Tulane, they come back out and, they played better against the bullshit Western Carolina team. But then, Nebraska was a little bit of a rough patch. And then West Virginia obviously was a rough patch. People knew. And that's why I think we talked about it on the post-OU Texas podcast. We didn't need Lincoln Riley to name the starting quarterback. His teammates had already told us who it was going to be.
Yeah. But, and then, it was interesting yesterday because Bob was asked about Caleb and if he's coming back next year. He said that wasn't for him to answer. and that he and his family, will still have discussions, and of course he'll have more with Jeff Lebby, and he's already had those, started those. But he wasn't directly asked the question, "Are you coming back next year?" on the podcast, or even what his relationship was like with Jeff Lebby, or what he thought of Jeff Lebby.
That would have been taken out anyway.
I would hope not.
That's fair, Bob.
I'd hate to find out that was taken out, because that would be ridiculous.
I would like to know what was taken out, because there are parts of it that are clearly edited.
A jump cut or two? Yeah.
Yes.
Get Bob coming in with the film terminology. It's impressive.
It is like, I don't know. I'm so sick
guys.
of
We
people
know
talking
OU has
about
no right to
Caleb's
do
gonna
that,
come back
right?
or not.
Well,
What?
if the NIL deal was with Caleb Williams, they wouldn't be able to do that. But since he was a guest appearing on an NIL podcast and there was no contract or an exchange of money for services, I would assume. Now, if they paid Caleb Williams, they have no right to do that. If he was a paid guest, they couldn't do that.
I will send Braden and Jeremiah the $20, and they can pay Caleb. And
we should have done that beforehand. Like, we want to give you money to pay him, so you can't mess with it. Like that's something that even if it's $1, like you could do. If you're a player and you have a podcast, this is not legal advice, so check with the lawyer before. I believe that as long as you draw up a little contract saying that you'll be a paid guest on whoever your producers are, whoever is actually running that, just do that for give somebody $5, and OU cannot mess with your podcast, because that would be all NIL.
It could be $1
right now for giving out this info.
It
could be for $1.
It's just crazy that this is a thing. Like, at some point, people like. Social media is there. Like, you cannot stop these things. They are going to be out there. Why people try to piss into the wind on this stuff, I just don't understand. And like Caleb's a smart kid.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not going to go on there and say things
crazy. He's
obviously
got really good guidance too. I mean,
yes, like he's not going to embarrass you. He's not going to do anything. Like, I get a concern over, I don't know. I don't want to pick an example and make some guy look bad. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's just. Caleb is clearly a very mature and very savvy guy. Like, show some faith in him.
I am.
Yes. I don't think anybody on this podcast would disagree.
You can say that about a lot of people, though, Eddie. I mean, really.
I'm a father of two, and I would say he probably makes better decisions than I do. Like, that's fine.
The whole thing is just it's insane.
It's just that constant thing, and it's not limited to OU, but these sports information departments, they make it worse by trying to make it better.
Sure.
Because the only people they're making it better for is themselves, and it's never going to be as. I mean, like, that's the ultimate irony in the last few years is the only time that anybody has said anything truly controversial was Austin Kendall appearing on university internal media.
And the best part about all of that, I've always found, like, just the funniest part of all of that was taped. It wasn't live.
I know.
Like, somebody could have gone back and looked at it.
Said, yeah, we should take that out.
It's amazing. It truly is amazing.
And it was such a big deal that they still had basic defense written out in the seats at Columbus the next year. Oh,
amazing. Is Austin Kendall moving on to, like, his 8th school? Is he playing an 8th year of college football this next year?
He did transfer, didn't he? Again?
Well, he just got done at Louisiana Tech this year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, not Tech.
He had to be a super senior. He was a 2016 class guy.
Yeah, I mean, he was here when Baker was here. He was Baker's backup when the year Kyler was sitting out.
Awesome, though, too, at the same time. Are you guys about as worn out, though? Just staying with the Caleb stuff for a second. Just are you guys as worn out about, is he leaving? Is he leaving? Is he leaving?
Reading into his answer about Venables as a sign that, he's leaving.
Well, basically reading into anything that the man does, anything the kid does is like, is this an indication? Is he leaning one way or the other? And then the other side of it too is the people that the fans deserve to know. The university deserves to know. Listen, I don't think that anybody, I put this on the board this morning. I don't think his teammates, I don't think anybody inside the program is on pins and needles around him wondering if he's going to stay one way or the other. Like there are no indications that he A, wants to leave, or B, is thinking about leaving. Now, has he made an announcement? Obviously not. Will he one day? I truly don't know if how they're gonna handle that. But right now, I would be pretty damn surprised if he ends up leaving. All indications are that he's going to be around next year as the quarterback for this school.
I think the one thing about Caleb that gives you a little bit of confidence that he's sticking around is just simply the fact that this is clearly his team. Like, he is clearly,
no doubt,
the guy that everyone is rallying around.
Now, if you want to look at it, and I was thinking about this morning, if you want to look into some of the stuff that he has put on social media, in a way, I kind of think he's coming out of a shell in that, like, now that Rattler has officially moved on, which we need to get into at some point with South Carolina, it does feel like he's blossoming into, this is his program now. Like, and this might sound stupid, and tell me if it is, but I saw last night that he was eating pho up in Oklahoma City, and it was like, it feels like he's starting to become part of the community in a way. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe that's stupid. Maybe I'm the asshole now that is looking too much into stuff. But it does feel like he's becoming like the guy in the program. And in a way, it I don't know. It's cool to see in that, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just, it feels like there is very much a momentum into, this is his program now. This is kind of his show, if you will.
Josh, from a football state of mind, how would he work with Jeff Lebby, do you think?
It's hard to think of that not being a really, really nice marriage. Like, in a lot of ways, I think it's better than what he was in. Because, guys, if you're Caleb Williams, like, I get that you're going to have questions for Jeff Lebby, like, and Brent Venables and all that. If you're considering USC, don't you have a lot of damn questions for Lincoln Riley too? Like, what happened this year? Why was Spencer Rattler woefully not ready? Why did he not make a step forward? Why did it look like we were incapable of adjusting at any point to a defense that everybody in the country knew we were going to face week in and week out? Like, I think those are valid questions. But from a football perspective, I mean, you watch what Lebby's done with Ole Miss. Like, he's willing to let you run, but it's not going to be a, you know, Corral had to do it a lot, and I bet you some people will use that against Lebby. You know, like, oh, he's going to make you run 20 times a game. Ole Miss does not have the personnel Oklahoma has. Corral was clearly the best player on that team and didn't have as many weapons. Yeah, that was a big part of it too. You're absolutely right. So like I said, I think Lebby will cater it exactly to him. And you look at the guys that they had, you know, and I know everybody doesn't want to bring it up, but look at the guys they had at Baylor. You look at Dylan Gabriel at UCF. There's a lot of comparison there for strengths and skill sets to what those guys can do and what Caleb Williams does.
Sorry, I'm getting a text I'll tell you about after the pod.
No, just to like capitalize on top of that too, or to add to that, Josh, you can say that, like, I think there's so many people that are fearful about saying or having like a comparison to the Baylor offense. And I know that Lebby does things a little bit probably differently than Art Briles did. But at the same time, it's kind of fun to have an offensive coordinator that, and I think Neil Kim brought this up on the board, that is a offensive line coach. Like, I think that him and Bill Beanabo, I'm fascinated to see what they can do as far as the OU run game, because there is going to be an emphasis on being physical up front.
Guys, I literally the last few days, I'll go back like when I have a little free time, and I'm sitting here watching some Ole Miss highlights right now. I'm watching the A&M game, and they do the stuff that Oklahoma had success running the ball with this year. When they went zone against Texas, when they did a lot of that stuff that we've all talked about, that's what he was doing at Ole Miss. You put him with Bill Bedenbaugh, and they can really draw up some stuff offensively. I mean,
well, I know that's
it's not rocket science.
I know that's one reason. By the way, the text people are gonna be like, "What was that text?" We were just informed that Caleb Williams still can't do media. So he was requesting.
Oh, because we are supposed to get players tomorrow. For people that are wondering, Friday we're supposed to get Zoom.
But we apparently will not be getting Caleb Williams. So
is that because he transferred, or is that because he just won't be able to do it?
I think Bob is sticking to Lincoln's media policies. Basically, is what the answer was. So
no Mario Williams.
No freshman at all.
Yeah, none of those guys.
No, but
not gonna catch me saying anything bad about Bob. We're gonna blame it on somebody else.
No, I would bleep you anyway.
Program guy.
I would just put one long pause or one long bleep.
But I would never say anything bad. So
okay, good. No, so okay, two things. Yes, I know Gabe Eichert is very much in favor of Lebby, and because he believes that this team needs to be running more zone schemes in the run game. But the other thing is, like, yeah, if Lincoln Riley's still around and I'm Caleb Williams, I'm going in there, I'm like, why the can't we pass against rush 3, drop 8? Yep. I mean, like, why could we never figure that out this year? Like, why can you not work with the receivers and the quarterback and figure this shit out? Because that's nothing new. I mean, I remember, God, go all the way back to that 77-0 game against Texas A&M. Well, not that. What year was that? I can't even remember now. It would have been the
77-0 game?
No, it would have been the 99 Texas A&M game. I think that's when Seth Littrell,
7 or something.
Seth Littrell had like the fake punt. But I remember before that game, Josh Heupel said he was like cocky as shit. Like he was like, "Oh, we're not going to have any problems, passing the ball on Texas A&M," because everybody's like, A&M's defense is really good. He's like, "No, we won't have any problems." And he's like, "Well, they just run zone all the time, and we can handle that." Like, why? Like, and he just torched them the whole game. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. So it's like now, you can't you fast forward 21 years, 22 years, and zone defense is somehow revolutionary against Lincoln Riley, an air raid disciples offense. I don't get it.
No, I mean, towards the end of the season, because the coaches weren't game planning. Seriously.
Jarrett Dagey dropped 370 on that Iowa State defense. And Oklahoma looked lost at times in that game.
Was it Dagey or I thought it was the backup that threw for 370. It was the freshman.
According to the box score, it's Dagey.
Oh, was it? Okay. It was
yeah.
It was
Garrett
Dagey.
Green had one pass according to the
Yeah, he's the run guy anyway.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm thinking of Tech. I'm thinking of the Tech quarterback, the freshman.
Oh yeah. That lit him up. Yep.
Yeah, he threw 300 something the week before OU played Iowa State.
Well, to me, the biggest indictment is the Oklahoma State game. When they're out there running their defense and they're taking advantage of their aggressiveness, and all of a sudden, Knowles comes out in the second half and says, "Let's just play the Iowa State defense." What else could go wrong?
For 322, by the way.
And OU did nothing on offense in the second half. I mean, it was embarrassing.
They didn't score.
We all agree. Knowles is a really sharp guy, really interesting dude, good defensive coordinator. I think he cashed in pretty well on the Ohio State thing, having a bunch of 6-year seniors, but that's another argument altogether. At the same time, he did the most obvious thing on the planet. How are you not prepared for that?
Yes.
You knew it was coming.
Man, we're really
we're be as stubborn as you
sorry.
Are
Yeah,
Knowles would be on defense.
You're not listening to the post Bedlam podcast. You are. It is post.
We never really had it.
We never did one. Never did one.
Oh, man.
No, it all makes sense now, though. I mean, my had a foot out the door.
Yeah.
Straight up.
But still, I mean, just go the whole season, though. I mean, go back. That's back to my point. Like, if I'm Caleb Williams, I'm like, what the Lincoln? Like, are we ever going to solve this? Like, aren't you one of the best offensive minds in college football, Like, you're not showing me that right now.
Caleb Williams has to feel like a lot of us felt, just a little duped as far as, who was this guy?
Yep. That's the word I've used, duped.
That's why, again, this assumption he's just going to go USC. USC has nothing on the offensive line. They are problematic up front. You think OU had problems? No, it's not even close. And then you got Ryan Abraham talking about one of the worst USC teams in decades. And you're going to go out there to just because? Like, I don't know.
I would love to have seen the thoughts going through Alex Grinch's head that first day he went out there to their practice and looked at their players, and he was like, because it had to be something along the lines of, shit. Like in a very bad way.
Yeah, this is worse than what I showed up to Norman and saw.
Like, there's no Adoree Jacksons out here.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's a problem. Like, I think people just like, oh, it's just going to, like, I keep hearing talk of, oh, in 2 years. In 2 years? Okay. Like, transfer portal's great. I mean, it's not like the transfer portal is suddenly going to, like, remove Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, and all these other schools from the equation. They're still part of the game. USC still is going to have to recruit the top guys against them. And what are they selling?
Should we just make
They do have a little bit of a head start, though, just because of what you can do when you go a mile out of campus, right? Or, 20 miles off campus.
Sure.
They have a built-in added advantage almost.
That's fair. It's fair. But, I mean, USC's always had that advantage. And I don't know.
Completely understand that.
Yep.
I'd say that Riley is a more dynamic recruiter and probably
that's fair.
coach overall than Clay Helton.
Than Clay Helton by a mile. Yep. No, we're not living in revisionist history. Lincoln Riley has plenty of strengths. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, that whole thing's weird. We have given Lincoln Riley enough of our brain for the day.
It's still fun to rip him, though.
I don't think the fans are going to hate it.
I found myself just enjoying it way too much on Twitter.
I'm excited for the Isaiah Thomas exit interview, Carrie, that we recorded over at the office.
Yeah, that will be up.
There's going to be some people that absolutely love what Isaiah Thomas had to say about that whole subject.
Oh, I haven't even heard this. I'm ready.
It'll be up tonight, so that's all I'm doing the rest of the day is working on that. So after I get the pod up, so
I think that the locker room sentiment is a lot like I think a lot of us have felt that. Looking back on it, and hindsight's always what
that he wasn't all in. Yeah, I mean,
there's some questions as far as what they were doing over the last month as a team.
Should be good. I'm looking forward to getting it out there.
I mean, what a fucking asshole! Just unbelievable.
See, we're not done, Josh.
No, I'm done now. I mean,
you know who Eddie wouldn't say that about? Bob Stoops.
Who? Well, no, because he's God. He's king.
He has a statue for a reason. Yeah,
he's a program guy.
By the way, we should just
we are 13 days away from seeing Bob Stoops back on the sidelines, which is going to be awesome. It was, guys. I think I'm finally used to him being quote unquote back. Like now that we've had 2 press conferences with him, it's like okay, this is starting to feel a little bit normal.
Here's my advice to Bob, and I think out of anyone out there, I'm okay to give him advice because we all know since Bob is retired. He's selling tequila. He's not shaving. Bob, on game day, shave that fucking face. Don't let him think that you're easygoing Bob anymore. I mean, I want to see Bob. I want to see game day Bob. No beard. I think that'll scare the out of people.
What if he just doesn't shave until game day? Like, what if he has like an actual beard on game day?
Monster, yeah.
No, I mean, clean shaven Bob, that's a sight to behold because we don't see it anymore.
I don't know. I wasn't ready for this thought. As long as he's wearing a visor, I don't care.
I don't know if he'd do it.
I am throwing around the idea of seeing my first OU football game in more than 10 years just to go see Bob Stoops in the Alamo Bowl.
I know.
It's be kind of fun. Like, I know that. Mm-hmm. Oh, here's the other thing that has just completely blown my mind this week from the OU fan base.
Damn it, Josh. Now I'm going to turn myself in for a credential. I wasn't going to.
Hey,
and we can go to what's our restaurant where I was sick last time?
La Fragata.
It was awesome.
Oh,
Fragata?
We can take Bob with us.
Yep.
We can have the full crew experience and stare at pictures of famous people. Like, who was it? There's like, they have the famous picture people. It was like, what's her name from that was married to Tony Parker?
Selena.
Eva Longoria.
Selena. Nicely done.
Tony Parker was probably like 3.
Welcome to this segment of Is This Racist?
That's not racist. I'm going to try and go to her childhood home while I'm down there.
You're confusing Latinos. That can be considered maybe partially.
They both live in San Antonio.
You know, Selena's been dead for like 40 years, right?
4, like...
No, 40.
24.
Like I said, 40. I know it's not 40.
I heard 4 too. I heard 4 too.
Mid-90s, yeah.
Like 95-ish, 96,
like
somewhere in that ballpark?
I think it's 95.
That
Great
was
movie,
That was
way.
Jennifer
Great
Lopez, by the way, not Selena in the movie.
It was like a documentary, I thought. The idea that like Brian Odom, Jamar Cain, and Calvin Thibodeau are going to come back to Oklahoma
That's really
and start
cool.
recruiting. Oh, I think it's unbelievable. I think it says a lot about all 3 of them. But like the fans that are like, they don't need to be coming back around the program. Like,
Well, do you want to play in a damn bowl game or not?
What's wrong with you people?
Shut
Brian
the hell
Odom
up.
isn't coming
That's
back
the stupidest
to take
shit.
the entire linebacker core.
And the whole thing, like Bob put an into it yesterday, but the whole, why doesn't Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables just coach the team?
Oh, that's a good one too. It's like, so you think they're going to install an offense in the matter of the game's in 13 days,
and they practiced
Wednesday,
once.
the Wednesday after.
Yeah, they practiced one time. They're not installing entirely new offenses and defenses before the bowl game. It's not possible.
No,
it's just not
I think it's
possible.
It's awesome that those guys are coming back to kind of finish what they started. I mean, everybody knows they got screwed over by their boss. They're the ones that got put into an awful situation, a predicament that they could have never expected to be in. It's awesome that they're coming back.
Yeah, and I think that's got to be.
And they had no control over it. It's not. This is. They're playing the card they were dealt, man.
And Bob, don't you think that's kind of the direction that everything goes tomorrow when we do talk to the players? Is just, are you guys pissed off and want to win this game in spite of Lincoln Riley, or
they have to.
Does anybody care?
How can it not galvanize you almost?
Well, because of 4 opt-outs. I mean, not saying anything against those four guys, but if you felt like the sentiment was, okay, we're going to show you why you should have been all in with us the entire season, and then you see 4 guys leave that are 4 of your biggest leaders, contributors. Like, well, who's going to carry that mantle for the next week and a half?
I think that isn't there a difference in carrying the mantle or carrying, trying to be a leader of a team and also keeping your future in mind. Because if you go out and you play in a meaningless bowl game and, God forbid something happens and Isaiah Thomas tears his knee up, then you screw up your next 5 years. Not just, I don't know. I get why some of those guys are playing. Bowl games are meaningless.
Well, and Bob himself said, you know what, if you're going to be drafted high, I get it. Like,
yeah,
you should sit out. Especially a game where both the head coaches have quit.
But he also said none of those guys pertain to his situation.
Well, I definitely think that Bob would like.
Put it out. He did. He said this is the deepest draft because of COVID, so there's going to be more people eligible than ever before. If you want to make a last impression in a bowl game, this was your chance to do it.
Yeah, so Bob is only talking about Sam Bradford, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, number 1 picks in the draft.
He's talking about like a top 5 pick or
Yeah.
something. Like Kayvon Thibodeau has no reason to play.
Like Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have a personal, but I do understand where some of those guys are coming from.
If
Kayvon
Thibodeau,
he's almost talking to Perrion Winfrey more than anybody.
You know, the thing that I didn't realize about that, I had this discussion with Isaiah just about how this all works. Like, okay, so your agent, like, he pays for all this stuff. He sets you up in San Diego. And, like, so when you get drafted, do you pay him back? And he's like, nope. So, like, these agents lay out, like, that's the other part. Like, you have these people that are laying out all this money for you to train. So it's like, that's the push and the pull of this whole thing. It's like, okay, so this guy's going to give me all this money, but I can't play in my last game, and he doesn't want me to play in the last game because he's got all this invested in me, but it's going to help me get prepared for the draft, and they're hiring the trainers for me. I'm going to run better 40s and shuttles and all this that I need to move up in the draft. So what do I do? Like, it's pretty tough, I'm sure, to tell that agent, like, look, I know you're paying out all this money, but I'm going to play. When everybody's in your ear saying, and Isaiah told me too, like some of the coaches were telling him that he should sit out. And those were coaches without a head coach, so they were being honest with him.
I mean, I don't know. People are like, well, you get to go out and have a game, or you play in the senior, like what's the difference between playing in the Senior Bowl? It is different. Like you've got, I mean, at the Alamo Bowl, how many scouts are really watching that
Yes,
game?
I mean, come on.
Like,
it's the Alamo Bowl. It's not the Rose Bowl. It's not the Sugar Bowl. It's not even I mean, it's not even the Cotton Bowl.
Yep. You're not going to always think back of the day, especially when you played at a place like
Alamo
Oklahoma.
Bowl. Hopefully you don't listen to this until we've approved our credentials.
Credentials declined.
Well, let's be honest. I will say, like, this is a situation that Oklahoma just doesn't find themselves in very often. And playing in a bowl
never
game
played in this bowl game before, ever. They've never had
the Alamo Bowl. They haven't played in a bowl game that is just as meaningless as this, as probably
the Sun Bowl,
the Russell Sweatpants Bowl, but
the Sun Bowl. You have to go back
Insight?
to
Maybe Insight.
Yeah, Insight. Yeah. There were some not so good. Although they played in the Insight Bowl. They were the preseason #1 team in the country that year.
Yep.
And they beat Florida State at home that year. I mean,
a lot of parallel this year.
Yeah.
And they were 1 or 2 in just about everybody's poll.
Landry Jones saved a lot more lives than Spencer Rattler.
Landry Jones is no longer at the bottom of my modern quarterback list.
Oh, wow.
Is Rattler?
Yes.
Jones is miles better than Spencer Rattler.
You think?
Miles.
How do you guys think that's going to go out at South Carolina?
I really want it to be great.
Compared to what they're used to, I think it's going to be fine. I mean, I think it'll go over well.
Do you guys think the lack of pressure? Do you think him not being like the forefront of the national championship hype and Heisman contender, like, do you think all that will make it a little easier? Like, I think there was part of him that was he struggled to keep focus.
You know what I saw yesterday?
Josh, you've seen 2022's early.
I saw that
odds, haven't you?
God,
unbelievable.
But, I mean, what would you guys put? Like his, like for me, top 30, maybe.
I'd go 100. I mean, it has to be like 250 to 1.
Yes. And I wouldn't make that bet. I love long odds like that, just to put like a $10 bet on it just because of the payoff. But I'm not getting that $10 back. That's not going to happen.
You know what I saw the other day that just irked me to no end? Eddie will appreciate this.
What?
A Spencer Rattler workout video on Insta.
What?
Yes.
Oh, I did see that.
Okay.
I'm like, that's the only time you work out because your body hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten worse since you got here. Like, is this the only time that you work out in front of cameras? Like, stop putting up those videos until your body transforms, all right?
Well, he's not under the watchful eye of Benny Wiley anymore. Maybe he will change.
P90X equipment, probably shortage.
Just the worst. What a loser.
So we went from Riley, now we're going to Wiley.
I mean, he's the one that blocked me. He's the one that started it.
Oh, I forgot that. He did block you.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's gone. F*** him.
I think everybody's better for it.
No, I do too.
Except for the current players have to deal with Schmitty now, which is what you want if you're a fan. You want the players to hate the strength and conditioning.
Isaiah had some good stories on Schmitty as well that you'll hear in the exit interview.
All right,
guys, I've already got people asking me about who our next guy is going to be. I mean, there's
yep.
We've reached out to some people. Don't worry, we're on it.
Carrie, I think it's fair to say that the idea that it just has to be one is probably not correct.
No, it's not. I mean, I really do see it expanding. I mean, even more.
Yep.
Hell, we could be in control of every football player before this thing is over. And I wouldn't mind that a bit.
Evil laugh. Nobody's editing our shit. Not happening.
Might even delve into a sport outside of football.
Maybe we'll put together our own super PAC. Investors.
Eddie, you talking about softball?
No.
Are we talking some ball is like? Is that what's happening here?
No.
I gotta assume golf if it's Eddie.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
We got a lot of visors to sell, all right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, play to your market.
By the way, big announcement for all you Imperial folks. Went to our screen printer yesterday. We will be stocking all Imperial hats and visors in the Sooner Scoop store.
Woo, woo.
There you go.
It was basically a demand Eddie made, and I just had to do it.
Well,
so.
I mean,
although
we're trying to get people outfitted with the best, okay?
I mean, that's your favorite. I've had other people tell me that Imperial does not fit their head particularly well.
Oh, really?
That they are more of the what is the brand? I know it's a popular brand. I mean, feel free to hit me up and let me know your favorite hat brands. I mean, the hat thing is, I kind of want to do a lot of different stuff with that, but I like the Imperial hats. I mean, I looked at them yesterday.
Sure.
And we will definitely have the Eddie-approved Imperial High Crown visor.
Can be beautiful. Needless to say, the Sooner Scoop store is going to be absolutely awesome.
I hope so. You sure are. You sure are selling it for someone. Well, you're writing checks that my ass has to cash. So
don't disappoint me.
We got I'll try not to disappoint you, Eddie.
There you go.
I live for that. That's every morning I wake up. Don't disappoint Eddie today. No, we got
more people need to live like that. You know, if we just started doing that,
I'm really worried that you're going to control a small communist country someday.
WWED. We'll just make bracelets.
I really want to make a T-shirt in USC colors that says Rush 3 Drop 8.
That'd be beautiful.
I think that would be amazing. That might be one of your best ideas ever.
No, not red and gold. Do it like we can have the choice of literally any Pac-12 color, not red and gold. Like purple
do a whole
and gold.
series, yeah.
Yeah, do like UCLA colors.
Okay,
I told you guys I had a buddy that bought his kiddos some UCLA football gear. He sent the picture to us a couple days ago. It's pretty fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we should just have a whole UCLA themed line in the store. The problem is, there's not a finite amount of money. That's why we need the super PAC. But we'll get to it in time. But the hats are definitely coming soon. So I got the logos. It's all embroidered, so it looks really good. The one that was sent to us looked like it was done by monkeys in a rainforest somewhere. It was awful. So went locally, and they're going to look good. They're going to be fire, as the kids would say. So, all right. Outside of that,
Josh,
Isaiah Thomas show will be up
in Texas high school football.
Oh.
I got it
or
on
any
this
kids to be on the watch for offer in January.
Eddie, are you trying to tell us that you're in on a parlay and you just need some advice?
Yeah, I got the over in the Brock Lorena game this afternoon.
Well, I hope you went with Shiner last night. Beat the piss out of Hawley. That was vicious.
It's one of my favorite traditions is just sitting around and watching some of these games over the weekend. Galena, North Shore, and Duncanville should be awesome Saturday afternoon.
It's amazing too, knowing that entire towns are sitting in Jerry World.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, guys, I've been to a couple of those through the years. It's usually right around the time we go to Oklahoma for family stuff, so I don't get to go as much as I would like to go. But man, they have some awesome stuff. Is College Station still coached by Steve Huff, the guy that was at Midwest City forever and ever?
Is he really? I didn't realize he was down there.
Yeah, and they're going for the 5A Division I state title tomorrow night. Gilmer and China Spring. I would take China Spring because China Spring knocked out Carthage, and Carthage has beaten the brakes off of Gilmer several times. So if you're looking for a sucker bet there, yeah, get somebody to go to take the Gilmer action against you. I think that might be a winner for you.
Okay, done. I will do that.
Yeah, Texas high school football talk.
All right, boys. Enjoyed it. It was a long one, but I think a good one, and I think people will enjoy that. Signing day behind us. Lots of stuff coming on the website. Still, we'll talk to players. We're gonna, like we said, we're moving our focus towards the Alamo Bowl. And gosh, I mean, I think I might have to go now. I mean, I don't know. To not go to a Bob Stoops coached football game seems criminal. I don't know. I'm confused. We'll figure it out. All right.
How does this affect my hotel room situation? Because I could have some strong comments. Either way.
Do you have a roommate if I go?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
so what you're telling me is you've gotten used
San Antonio, Kerry. I don't know if you'd want to put up with that.
You've gotten used to the single room life, is what you're telling me. Now that I get you, since COVID hit, I have made sure to get Bob and Eddie
that's right.
separate
We're in a
rooms.
pandemic. We can't share a room.
No, I would have to get another room.
Yeah, we can't. We can't do that. I mean, my gosh.
What are you doing in your room by yourself?
Everything's shut down again.
Are you just? Is it just Weed Palace in your room when you go somewhere now?
No.
Okay, I'm wondering why you're afraid to have someone in your room, but those are questions better not asked or answered. All right, that's going to do it. We'll be back again next week. Alamo Bowl here. Some of us come, maybe all of us come. We'll figure it out. But keep checking the site for full coverage. Players will be talking to them on Friday as we're recording this on Thursday. As practice is just getting underway for the bowl game. It'd be interesting, like we said, hearing from some of the players and their thoughts on things moving forward, their motivation for this game. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com.